Ambassador Sci-fi stood before the massive communication array on Serenity Prime, his long fingers trembling as he prepared to send what might be his people's last message to the galaxy. The tall, slender alien had never imagined he would face such a terrible choice. His people, the Calari, had lived in peace for thousands of years. They grew beautiful gardens, created art that sang with living colors, and built cities from living trees that reached toward the stars. Now, those cities were burning. The mechanical monsters had come from the darkness between worlds 3 months ago. The Calari called them harvesters because they took everything. They stripped the metal from buildings, the minerals from soil, even the water from rivers. Worse, they took the Calari themselves, dragging screaming families into their black ships. No one who entered those ships ever returned. Sci-fi watched the display screen showing his people's outer colonies. Colony 7 was completely dark now. Colony 5 had gone silent yesterday. The mining station at Red Rock had stopped responding this morning. The harvesters moved like a plague across Calari space, and nothing could stop them. The Calari had tried to fight back, but they had no weapons. Their entire civilization was built on harmony and peace. They had no armies, no soldiers, no concept of warfare. When the first harvester ship arrived at Colony 9, the Calari administrators had tried to welcome them as guests. They offered food, shelter, and friendship. The harvesters had responded by tearing the colony apart piece by piece. Elder Vixta, the oldest and wisest of the Calari leaders, placed a gentle hand on Sci-fi's shoulder. His ancient eyes were filled with sadness. "Are you certain this is our only choice?" he asked softly. Sci-fi looked at the elder with respect. Vixta had lived for over 300 years and had never seen violence until the harvesters came. None of them had. Violence was something that happened on other worlds, to other species. The Calari had evolved on a peaceful world where cooperation meant survival and aggression meant death. "The Altarians say they are too far away to help," Sci-fi replied, his voice breaking slightly. "The Nexari offered to take some of our children as refugees, but they cannot fight the harvesters. The Vorthok will not even answer our messages. No one in the galaxy wants to face these machines." Elder Vixta nodded slowly. He understood. The galactic community was made up of peaceful species like themselves. They traded knowledge, shared art, and explored the mysteries of the universe together, but none of them had ever faced a threat like this. They had no experience with war, no understanding of combat, no weapons that could harm the harvesters. "Send the message," Elder Vixta said quietly. "If we must die, at least we will die knowing we tried everything." Sci-fi activated the communication array and began broadcasting on all known galactic frequencies. The message was simple and desperate. They needed help. They needed someone with weapons, someone who understood fighting, someone who could stop the harvesters before they consumed every Calari world. The response was immediate, but not encouraging. Dozens of species sent messages of sympathy. Some offered to preserve Calari art and culture. Others promised to remember their civilization fondly. Few offered to take refugees, but only small numbers. No one offered to fight. Hours passed. The harvesters continued their advance. Long-range sensors showed their ships approaching the middle colonies now. Soon they would reach Serenity Prime itself, the heart of Calari civilization. Sci-fi felt despair settling in his chest like a cold weight. Then something strange happened. A new message arrived, but this one was different. It came from coordinates that made the computer systems flash warning signals. The message was short, written in broken galactic standard, and came from a world marked in red on every star chart Sci-fi had ever seen. "Help coming. Hang tight." Coordinates belonged to a small planet in the outer spiral arm, a world that every civilized species avoided. The Galactic database listed it as Extreme Quarantine Zone, Deathworld, Class 12. According to the records, it was a nightmare world of extreme gravity, violent weather, and deadly creatures. The database said that somehow, impossibly, an intelligent species had evolved there. But they were considered too dangerous to contact. Elder Vixta looked at the message with confusion. "What does hang tight mean?" he asked. Jay searched the translation database. The phrase came from the Deathworld's dominant language. It meant to hold on, to wait, to not give up. He felt a tiny spark of hope in his chest, but also fear. What kind of species lived on a death world? What would they want in return for help? Far across the galaxy, on the third planet of a small yellow star, Commander Jake Sullivan read the Callry distress call for the third time. The human officer sat in the command center of the UES Vengeance, a warship built for the harsh realities of human space. Around him, his crew worked quietly at their stations. Jake was a veteran of the corporate wars, the Martian Rebellion, and a dozen smaller conflicts that had shaped human expansion into space. He was tall and muscular, with scars on his hands from combat training and gray hair that showed his 45 years of life. His dark eyes had seen too much violence, but they still held compassion for those who suffered. Lieutenant Amy Carter, his tactical officer, looked up from her console. She was young, maybe 28, with short brown hair and the quick movements of someone trained for combat. "Sir, this message is being broadcast on every frequency. These aliens are really desperate." Sergeant Ben Rogers, the communications specialist, nodded from his station. He was a big man with steady hands and a calm voice that could cut through the chaos of battle. "I've been monitoring Galactic chatter, Commander. Nobody's responding. With military aid, they're all offering sympathy and refugee assistance, but no one's offering to fight." Jake studied the tactical display showing the Harvester advance. His trained eye quickly identified the pattern the machines were using. Standard strip mining tactics, moving systematically through a target zone and consuming everything in their path. It was efficient, but predictable. Any human military academy graduate could design a counter-strategy. "What do we know about these harvesters?" Jake asked. Amy pulled up her analysis. Based on the Callry sensor data, they appear to be fully automated. No biological crew, pure machine intelligence. They prioritize resources over tactics, which makes them dangerous against civilians, but vulnerable to organized military response. Ben added more information. "The Callry have no military capability at all, sir. Their language doesn't even have words for most military concepts. They're completely helpless against any kind of aggressive force." Jake felt the familiar weight of command settling on his shoulders. He had sworn an oath to protect humanity, but these weren't humans crying for help. They were aliens from a species that had never harmed anyone, being destroyed by machines that would strip their worlds bare and leave nothing but empty rock. He thought about his daughter Katie, safe in the Sol system, going to school and playing with her friends. He thought about his wife Maria, working as a doctor on Luna Colony, healing people and saving lives. He thought about billions of humans across dozens of worlds, living free because people like him stood ready to fight when fighting was necessary. The Callry children probably played games too, probably had dreams and hopes and people they loved. Now they were dying because no one in the galaxy understood that sometimes you had to fight to protect what mattered. Jake made his decision. "Amy," signaled the fleet. "All ships prepare for emergency deployment. Ben, send a message to these Callry. Tell them help is coming." Amy looked surprised. "Sir, we don't have authorization from Earth Command for this kind of operation." Jake smiled. "Grimly, Amy, there's an entire species about to be wiped out by machines. By the time we get authorization, they'll all be dead. Sometimes you have to do what's right first and ask for permission later." Ben sent the message while Amy began coordinating. With the other ships in Jake's battle group, the UES Retribution, commanded by Captain Lisa Hayes, confirmed ready status. The destroyer U.S. Defiance, under Captain Mark Wilson, reported combat systems online. Support vessels began loading supplies and preparing for extended operations. Within hours, the human fleet was ready to depart. Jake stood on the bridge of the Vengeance, looking out at the stars that held so much beauty and so much danger. Somewhere out there, people were dying. Didn't matter that they weren't human. It didn't matter that they came from a world of peace and harmony that most humans could barely imagine. What mattered was that they needed help. And humans knew how to fight. "All ships," Jake announced over the fleet communication system, "jump. In 30 seconds. Target, Callry space." stop the harvesters, and save as many lives as possible. The stars shifted as the human fleet entered hyperspace, carrying weapons of war toward a species that had never known violence. Behind them, Earth continued its steady rotation around a yellow sun, home to the only species in the galaxy that understood that sometimes peace had to be defended with force. Elder Vixta watched the display screens with growing despair. The harvester machines had reached Colony 3 during the night, and the screams from the communication channels had finally stopped an hour ago. Now Colony 3 was just another dark spot on the galactic map, stripped of everything that had made it alive. The old Kalari leader had lived for over 300 years. The past week had aged him more than the previous century. He stood in the command center of Serenity Prime, surrounded by younger Kalari, who looked to him for wisdom he no longer possessed. How do you fight an enemy that feels no pain, shows no mercy, and wants nothing but to consume everything in its path? Sci-fi hurried to his side, his long fingers dancing over the sensor controls. Oh! Elder, something is happening at the edge of our system. Multiple contacts approaching at impossible speeds. Vixta looked at the readings and felt his heart skip. The approaching ships were moving faster than any vessel in the Galactic database. Their energy signatures were unlike anything he had ever seen, and they were heading straight for the largest concentration of harvester ships. Are they more harvesters? He asked quietly. Sci-fi shook his head, his large eyes wide with confusion. No, Elder. These ships are different. Their designs are completely unknown. They are broadcasting a message. The message came through. In that same broken galactic standard they had received days ago. This is Human Fleet Commander Jake Sullivan. All Kalari ships and stations, stay clear of combat zones. We are engaging hostile forces now. Before Vixta could ask what a human was, space around the outer colonies erupted in violence, unlike anything the Kalari had ever imagined. Commander Jake Sullivan stood on the bridge of the UES Vengeance as his fleet dropped out of hyperspace directly into the middle of the harvester formation. Around him, his crew worked with the smooth efficiency of people who had trained for exactly this situation their entire lives. Tactical assessment, Jake ordered calmly. Lieutenant Amy Carter studied her screens rapidly. Upper keys. Approximately 200 harvester vessels of various sizes. They appeared to be strip mining Colony 2. No defensive formations, no escort patterns. They're acting like they own this space. Jake nodded grimly. The machines had never faced organized resistance before, so they had never learned to protect themselves. That was about to change. Ben signaled the fleet. Execute. Delta 7. Priority targets are the largest vessels. Sergeant Ben Rogers sent the orders instantly. Across the human fleet, weapon systems came online with deadly purpose. The UES Retribution, commanded by Captain Lisa Hayes, moved to attack position alongside the destroyer U.S. Defiance. Support. Vessels spread out to prevent any harvester ships from escaping. The first human weapons fired, and the Kalari watching from their distant sensors could hardly believe what they saw. Bright streams of energy and physical projectiles tore through harvester hulls like they were made of paper. Ships that had seemed invincible to the peaceful Kalari began exploding in brilliant flashes of light, but the humans were just getting started. Captain Lisa Hayes commanded the heavy cruiser U.S. Retribution from her battle bridge, her experienced hands steady on the control interfaces. She was a veteran of 15 years of human conflicts, with short blonde hair and the kind of calm demeanor that came from facing death repeatedly and surviving. Weapons Officer Murphy, target their command ship, she ordered. Full broadside. Lieutenant Ryan Murphy was young, but skilled, with the quick reflexes needed for space combat. His fingers moved across his weapons console like a musician playing a complex song. Targeting solutions locked, firing now, the Retribution's main. Guns spoke with thunder that could be heard across space. Heavy projectiles moving at incredible speeds punched through the largest harvester ship's hull and detonated inside. The machine vessel came apart in a chain of explosions that lit up the darkness like a small sun. The harvesters finally began to react, turning their mining equipment toward the human ships. but their weapons were designed for cutting through. Rock and metal, not for fighting warships designed by a species that had been fighting wars for thousands of years, Major. Alex Turner led the human fighter squadrons from his cockpit, diving through the growing battle with the skill of someone who had been flying combat missions since he was 20 years old. His fighters were small and fast, built to outrun and outfight anything they encountered. Red Squadron, take the left flank, he ordered over the communication system. Blue Squadron, hit their support vessels, make them hurt. The human fighters moved like a pack of hunting animals, coordinating their attacks with an instinctive understanding of how to hurt an enemy. They used the harvester ship's size against them, darting between the massive vessels and striking at vulnerable points that the machines couldn't protect. Back on Serenity Prime, Kaleri watched in amazement and growing horror as the humans systematically destroyed the harvester fleet. But what shocked them most was not the violence itself, but how organized it was. The humans didn't fight like wild animals. They fought like they had practiced this exact scenario 1,000 times. Every move had a purpose. Every attack was coordinated with others. When one human ship was damaged, others moved to protect it while it retreated for repairs. They are not just fighting, Zephi whispered to Elder Vixtha. They are hunting. The old elder nodded slowly. He was beginning to understand what kind of species came from Deathworlds. These humans had evolved in a place where everything was trying to kill them, so they had become very good at killing everything else first. Marine Colonel Kate Phillips stood in the shuttle bay of the UES. Vengeance, watching her troops prepare for ground operations. The colony to surface still had Kalari survivors trapped in underground shelters, and the harvesters had deployed ground forces to dig them out. Kate was a career soldier, tall and strong with the kind of presence that made people follow her into dangerous places. She had fought in ground campaigns across human space and knew that space battles were only half the war. The real work happened on the surface where people lived and died. Listen up, she told her Marines. The enemy. Down there are machines. They don't feel pain. They don't surrender, and they don't show mercy. But they also don't adapt well to changing situations. We hit them hard, we hit them fast, and we get those civilians out of there. Sergeant First Class Mike Johnson checked his squad's equipment one final time. He was a veteran of urban combat, with the steady nerves needed to fight in close quarters. His men trusted him to bring them home, and he had never let them down. Colonel shuttles are ready for deployment, he reported. Kate nodded. Take us down, Sergeant. Those people have been hiding in holes for days. Time to give them some hope. The human shuttles launched from their mother ships like deadly insects, diving toward the planet's surface where harvester ground units were systematically destroying everything they could find. The shuttles were built for combat insertions, armored against enemy fire and fast enough to avoid most weapons. Commander? Nick Jackson piloted the lead shuttle with the skill of someone who had been flying in combat zones for over a decade. He was calm under fire, with the kind of steady hands that could thread a shuttle through enemy defenses and deliver troops exactly where they needed to be. Colony to surface in 30 seconds, he announced. Around the civilian shelters, multiple mechanical units, various sizes. Kate looked out the shuttle's window and saw the devastation below. What had once been a beautiful Kaleri settlement was now a wasteland of torn metal and broken stone. The harvesters had begun dismantling everything, including the underground shelters, where families were hiding. Set us down behind that ridgeline, she ordered. We go in on foot from there. The human Marines hit the ground running, their weapons ready and their movements coordinated like they had trained together for years. They moved through the ruined colony with the efficiency of professionals, each person knowing their job and trusting their teammates to do theirs. The harvesters on the surface were not prepared for organized resistance. Their programming told them to expect helpless civilians who would run or hide. Instead, they faced soldiers who advanced steadily toward them, using cover and coordinated fire to destroy the mechanical units one by one. Sergeant Johnson led his squad around the left flank, while another squad took the right. They moved like they were parts of a single organism, each person supporting the others while they closed in on the enemy positions. Contact front, one of his Marines called out. 3 mechanical units, heavy construction type. Johnson could see the machines through his targeting scope. They were large and powerful, built for tearing apart buildings and digging through rock. Against unarmed civilians, they would be terrifying. Against trained soldiers with military weapons, they were just targets. "Take them down," he ordered calmly. The human weapons fire was precise and devastating. The harvester units designed for construction work had no armor against military-grade ammunition. They fell quickly, their mechanical bodies sparking and smoking as they shut down permanently, above in space. Commander Jake Sullivan watched the tactical display as his fleet finished destroying the last of the harvester ships. The battle had lasted less than 6 hours from start to finish. Dr. Kethlin stood at the edge of the human military base on Serenity Prime's moon, watching the alien soldiers work with a mixture of fascination and fear. The Calari scientist had volunteered to serve as the first contact specialist, mainly because nobody else wanted the job. After seeing what humans could do to the harvesters, most Calari preferred to keep their distance from the Deathworlders. The humans had built their base in just 3 days, using methods that seemed impossible to Calari understanding. They brought machines that dug into solid rock, created structures from metal and concrete, and established defensive positions that could probably stop a small army. Everything they built was designed for war, even their temporary shelters. Colonel Steve Barnes walked toward the Calari scientist with the steady stride of someone accustomed to command. The human was shorter than most Calari, but much broader, with thick muscles and scars that spoke of a violent life. His eyes were alert and watchful, never quite relaxed even in what should be a safe area. "Dr. Kethlin," the colonel said in careful Galactic standard, "thank you for agreeing to meet with us. We know this situation is difficult for your people." Kethlin nodded nervously. Close, the human was even more intimidating. His hands looked strong enough to crush metal, and he moved with the controlled grace of a predator. Every Calari instinct screamed that this creature was dangerous. Colonel Barnes Kethlin replied in his soft voice, "My people are grateful for your help, but we do not understand. Why did you come? What do you want from us?" Steve Barnes looked genuinely puzzled by the question. "We came because you asked for help and people were dying. We don't want anything from you, except maybe to learn about your culture and share knowledge." The simple honesty in the human's voice confused Kethlin even more. In Calari society, nothing was ever free. Every action had a purpose. Every favor created an obligation. The idea that someone would risk their lives for strangers without expecting payment made no sense. Major Julie Henderson joined the conversation, carrying a tablet with translation software. She was smaller than Colonel Barnes, but carried herself with the same controlled confidence. Her brown hair was cut short in a practical style, and her uniform was clean but showed signs of hard use. "Doctor, we brought some of our cultural specialists to help with communication," she said. "Dr. Alina Ross has been studying your language and customs. We hope she can help bridge the gap between our peoples." Dr. Alina Ross was different from the military humans. She was tall and thin, with long dark hair and gentle movements that reminded Kethlin more of his own people. When she spoke, her voice was soft and careful, without the hard edge that most humans seem to carry. "Dr. Kethlin, I am fascinated by your civilization," she said in surprisingly good Galactic standard. "Your integration of biological technology with artistic expression is unlike anything in human experience. We would be honored to learn from you." Kethlin felt some of his fear fade. This human, at least, seemed to understand that knowledge should be shared peacefully. "Your people are very different from us," he said carefully. "We have been studying the records of your battles. Your world must be a terrible place to create such skilled fighters." Lena nodded sadly. "Earth is a beautiful world, but also a dangerous one. We evolved alongside creatures that could kill us easily in environments that changed without warning. We learned to cooperate and fight because those who didn't became extinct." The concept horrified Kethlin. His people had evolved on a world where cooperation was rewarded and aggression was punished by natural selection. Violence was so rare in Calari history that they had no cultural framework for understanding it. The idea of a world where fighting was necessary for survival seemed like a nightmare. How do your children learn to live with such danger? He asked. Alina smiled, and for the first time Kethlin saw warmth in human features. They learn that the universe can be hostile, but they also learn that they are not alone. Human children grow up knowing that their families, their communities, their entire species will fight to protect them. As if summoned by their conversation, the sound of children's laughter echoed across the base. Kethlin looked toward the sound in surprise. He had not realized the humans had brought families with them. Major Henderson noticed his confusion. The UES Haven arrived yesterday with family members and civilian specialists. We believe that understanding between species comes from daily interaction, not just formal meetings. Kethlin watched as human children played near the base perimeter under the watchful eyes of both human adults and Clary observers. The children seemed completely unafraid, despite being on an alien world surrounded by military equipment. One small girl with blonde hair was showing a group of young Kalari how to play some kind of throwing game. That is Emma Boyd, Alina explained. She is 8 years old and has already made friends with 6 Kalari children. Yesterday she taught them a human game called Catch. Today they are teaching her a Kalari harmony exercise. The sight was remarkable. The human child moved with the same controlled grace as the adult humans, but her face was open and friendly. The Kalari children, normally shy around strangers, seemed completely comfortable with her. They were creating something together, combining human and Kalari play patterns into something new. Staff Sergeant Chris Boyd walked over to check on his daughter. Kethlin could see the family resemblance. The soldier was tall and strong like most human males, with the same blonde hair as his child. But when he looked at Emma, his hard features softened completely. "Emma, stay where the guards can see you," he called gently. The little girl waved. At her father, "Daddy Zixai is teaching me how to sing colors. Listen." She made a sound that was somehow musical and visual at the same time, a trick that took most Kalari children years to master. Chris Boyd's expression showed amazement and pride. "That's wonderful, sweetheart. Maybe you can teach me later." Kethlin realized he was seeing something important. The human soldiers were not just warriors. They were also parents, teachers, and protectors. Their capacity for violence existed alongside an equal capacity for gentleness. Corporal Maria Santos joined the group, carrying supplies for the children's activities. She was compact and muscular, with the quick movements of a trained fighter, but she handled the toys and games with careful gentleness. "Doctor, the children asked me to invite some Kalari families to tonight's meal," she said to Kethlin. "We thought shared food might help everyone feel more comfortable." The invitation surprised Kethlin. Sharing meals was deeply significant. In Kalari culture, reserved for close friends and family members. The fact that the humans offered this honor to strangers showed a level of respect he had not expected. "I will ask some families," he agreed. "But you should know that Kalari dietary needs are very different from human requirements." Maria smiled. "We brought our best cooks and medical staff. Captain Tony Walker has been working with your nutritionists to create meals that both species can enjoy safely." As the day continued, Kethlin found himself drawn into more interactions with the humans. He met Captain Walker, an engineering officer who was fascinated by Kalari biotechnology. The human asked intelligent questions about their living buildings and organic computers, offering insights from human mechanical engineering in return. He talked with Dr. Ross about philosophy and art, discovering that humans had concepts of beauty and harmony that paralleled Kalari understanding, even though they had developed in completely different ways. Human music was more aggressive than Kalari's song, but it carried the same emotional depth. Most surprisingly, he spent time with some of the human children. 10-year-old Sam Carter showed him pictures of Earth, describing a world of incredible variety and stunning beauty. The child spoke of oceans and forests, mountains and deserts, creatures both gentle and fierce. "Is it true that everything on your world tries to kill you?" Kethlin asked carefully. Sam considered this seriously. "Not everything. And my dog buddy would never hurt anyone unless they tried to hurt me. And most animals just want to find food and take care of their families like people do. But some animals are dangerous, so we learn to be careful." "Are you afraid?" The child shook his head. "Not really. My parents taught me how to stay safe, and if something bad happens, there are Always people to help. That is what people do. As evening approached, Kethlin joined the shared meal in the human base's main hall. The room was filled with the sounds of two species trying to communicate across a vast cultural divide. Human and Kaleri children sat together, sharing food and playing simple games that required no common language. Elder Vixtha had agreed to attend, along with several other Kaleri officials. The old leader sat next to Colonel Barnes, both of them working carefully through translation software to discuss practical matters like medical cooperation and resource. Sharing Kethlin found himself sitting between Dr. Ross and young Emma Boyd. The human child was trying to teach a Kaleri naming song to her new friends, while the adult human discussed the philosophical implications of violence and protection. Your people fight because you love what you are protecting, Kethlin said. To Alina, this is different from what we expected. Alina nodded. Violence for its own sake is evil. Dr. Kethlin was teaching human children about Kaleri harmony, singing when the emergency alarms began screaming across the base. The peaceful afternoon on Serenity Prime's moon turned into chaos as soldiers ran to their positions and civilians hurried to safety shelters. Commander Jake Sullivan burst into the command center where Colonel Barnes and his staff were already analyzing the incoming data. The readings on the screens made even the experienced human officers pale with concern. Report, Jake ordered sharply. Lieutenant Amy Carter looked up from her console with wide eyes. Sir, long-range sensors are detecting a massive fleet approaching. From the Galactic core, computer estimates over 50,000 ships of various sizes, with more contacts appearing every minute. Jake studied the tactical display with growing unease. The approaching fleet was enormous, far larger than anything in human military records. Worse, the energy signatures matched the harvester technology they had just finished destroying. How long until they reach this system? He asked. At current speed, approximately 72 hours, Amy replied. Sir, this makes the previous harvester force look like a scouting party. Colonel Barnes joined the conversation, his face grim. Commander, we need to contact Earth immediately. This is beyond what one battle group can handle. Jake nodded and turned to Sergeant Ben Rogers. Ben, send an emergency signal to Earth Command. Full military priority. Tell them we need every available ship, and we need them now. The communications went out. Elder Vixtha arrived with Ambassadors Scifi and Dr. Kethlin. The old Kaleri leader looked even more fragile than usual, his ancient eyes filled with a fear that went beyond simple terror. Commander Sullivan, Vixtha said quietly, we must tell you something about these machines. The harvesters you destroyed were not the real enemy. They were servants of something much worse. Jake felt ice forming in his stomach, explained Scifi. Activated a holographic display showing data from the outer colonies. Before our people died, they managed to transmit information about their attackers. The harvesters served a species called the Collective. They convert organic life into mechanical servants and consume entire worlds to build more ships. Dr. Kethlin added more disturbing details. According to our historical records, the Collective has been expanding outward from the Galactic core for thousands of years. Every species they encounter either flees, dies, or becomes part of their machine army. Jake absorbed this information with the calm of a professional soldier, but inside he felt the magnitude of what they were facing. How many worlds have they taken? We estimate several thousand systems, Vixtha replied sadly. The peaceful species of the galaxy have been fleeing from them for centuries. We thought we were far enough away to be safe. What about military resistance? Colonel Barnes asked. Surely someone has tried to fight them. The three Kaleri exchanged glances that spoke of terrible knowledge. Finally, Scifi answered, Commander, you must understand something about our galaxy. Before humans, there were no military forces. Every intelligent species achieved peace. Through evolution or technology, none of us know how to fight. The human officers stared at them in disbelief. Amy Carter spoke for all of them when she said, You mean we are the only military force in the entire galaxy? Yes, Dr. Kethlin confirmed. Every other species either evolved on peaceful worlds or transcended the need for violence through advanced technology. We trade knowledge, share resources, and explore together, but we never learned to wage war. Jake felt the weight of impossible responsibility settling on his shoulders. A galaxy full of peaceful civilizations faced extinction, and humanity was the only species that could fight back. The irony was bitter. Humans had always been considered outcasts because of their violent nature. Now that violence might be the only thing that could save everyone. The next few hours brought increasingly bad news. Admiral Patricia Stone arrived with the battleship U.S. Indomitable and the largest human fleet ever assembled. But even their combined forces seemed tiny compared to what was approaching. Admiral Stone was a veteran of 30 years in space. A tall woman with gray hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. She stood in the command center of her flagship, studying the tactical displays with the calm of someone who had faced impossible odds before. Status report. She ordered as soon. As the fleet commanders were assembled via communication link, Captain Lisa Hayes spoke first from the UES Retribution. Admiral, we have 47 human warships of various classes. Total crew complement approximately 15,000. We're significantly outnumbered. Captain Bill Murphy of the heavy cruiser Use Justice added more sobering facts. Our intelligence. Analysis suggests the collective fleet contains multiple ship types we have never encountered. Some of the larger vessels appear to be converted planets. Admiral Stone absorbed this without changing expression. Commander Paul Mitchell, serving as liaison to the alien species, delivered the news everyone feared. Ma'am, the Altarians offer computational assistance but no combat vessels. The Nexari are providing communication technology but refuse to fight. The Vorthok are already evacuating their home system, so we stand alone, Admiral Stone said simply. Jake nodded. Yes, ma'am, but we are not entirely without support, when the younger aliens are volunteering to help in non-combat roles. Cannot fight, but they want to contribute. As if summoned by his words, Dr. Kethlin entered the command center with a group of Kolari volunteers. The lead scientist looked nervous but determined. Admiral Stone, he said, in carefully practiced. Human standard, my people wish to offer what help we can. We cannot fight, but we understand collective technology better than you do. Perhaps we can find weaknesses. Admiral Stone studied the alien scientist with respect. Doctor, any help you can provide would be appreciated. What do you know about their capabilities? Dr. Kethlin activated his portable display, showing technical readouts that made the human officers lean forward with interest. The collective ships are highly advanced, but follow predictable patterns. They prioritize efficiency over adaptability, have never faced organized resistance, so their tactics are designed for conquest, not warfare. Captain Rachel Murphy, commanding the intelligence ship U.S. Observer, asked the crucial question. Doctor, do they have any weaknesses we can exploit? Several Kethlin replied with growing confidence. Their ships are controlled by a central network. Disrupt the network, and individual ships become less effective. Also, they have never encountered weapons designed specifically for combat. Their defenses are built to resist industrial accidents, not military attacks. Lieutenant Commander Frank Davis, Admiral Stone's tactical officer, studied the data carefully. Admiral, if the doctor is correct, we might be able to use our size. Disadvantage as an advantage. Hit them fast, hit them hard, and keep them from coordinating properly. Admiral Stone nodded slowly. It is a good plan, but we will need more than human ships to make it work. Doctor, how many alien volunteers are willing to serve on human vessels? Kethlin looked surprised by the question. You would trust us aboard your warships. Doctor, this is not just about humanity anymore, Admiral Stone replied. If we lose, everyone in the galaxy loses. We need every advantage we can get, and your people understand the enemy better than we do. Over the next day, an unprecedented cooperation began between species that had never worked together before. Kolari scientists like Zixfon joined human engineering teams to modify weapon systems. Young Kolari volunteers trained under human instructors to operate communication equipment and sensor arrays. The most surprising development came when Ambassador Zephy High approached Commander Sullivan with an unusual request. Commander, some of our younger people wish to learn human fighting methods. They cannot become soldiers in time for this battle, but they want to help protect their families. Jake looked at the ambassador carefully. Fighting goes against everything. Your people believe? Are you certain about this? ShFY nodded firmly. Commander, we have learned that sometimes peace must be defended with force. If we survive this, we want to ensure it never happens again. Training began immediately under the supervision of Marine Colonel Kate Phillips and Sergeant First Class Linda Cross. The Kaleri volunteers were clumsy and frightened at first, but they learned quickly. They would never be human Marines, but they could learn to defend their homes. Meanwhile, Captain Tyler Brooks worked with alien engineers to develop new tactical approaches. The peaceful species had technologies that humans had never imagined. Kalari biotechnology could create living weapons that adapted to battlefield conditions. Altarian quantum computers could coordinate attacks across vast distances. Nexari crystal technology could jam enemy communications. As the collective fleet drew closer, the combined force of humans and aliens prepared for what might be the last battle anyone would ever fight. Admiral Stone stood on the bridge of the Use Indomitable, looking out at a fleet that represented the best hope of 24 peaceful civilizations. All ships, prepare for combat, she announced over the fleet communication system. Remember, we are not just fighting for humanity, are fighting for every species in the galaxy that believes in freedom and peace. Admiral Patricia Stone stood on the bridge of the UES Indomitable as the collective fleet filled the darkness ahead like a swarm of metal locusts. The enemy ships numbered in the tens of thousands, their black holes reflecting no light as they moved in perfect formation toward the combined fleet of humans and aliens. All ships report ready, Admiral, Commander Jake Sullivan announced from his coordination station. Round the bridge, human and Kaleri crew members worked side by side, their different species united by the common goal of survival. Admiral Stone looked at the tactical display showing their own forces. 47 human warships supported by hundreds of alien vessels that had never been designed for combat. Cargo ships fitted with human weapons, passenger liners converted to troop transports, and research vessels loaded with experimental technology. It should have been hopeless, but Admiral Stone had learned something important over the past few days. When peaceful species finally decided to fight, they brought advantages that no one expected. Signaled the fleet, she ordered. All ships, execute Battle Plan Omega. Remember, we are not just defending our homes. We are defending the right of every species to choose their own future. The battle began when the first collective ships entered weapons range. Captain Lisa Hayes, commanding the UES Retribution, opened fire with her main guns, while Kalari technician Zix Vaughn fed targeting data from biological sensors that could detect mechanical weaknesses invisible to human equipment. Direct hit on enemy flagship, reported Lieutenant Ryan Murphy from his weapons station. Kaleri sensors show massive internal damage. Their central coordination node is offline. The collective responded with overwhelming firepower, but their attacks followed predictable patterns that human tactical doctrine had already solved. Admiral Stone had reorganized the combined fleet using lessons learned from centuries of human warfare, turning the aliens' peaceful technologies into tools of organized resistance. Captain Tyler Brooks led the destroyer squadron in a coordinated attack run, his ships moving like a pack of wolves through the enemy formation. Behind him, Altarian quantum computers guided human missiles with impossible precision, while Nexari communication crystals jammed collective command frequencies. Red Squadron, target their command ships, ordered Major Alex Turner from his fighter cockpit. His squadron included both human pilots and young Kaleri, who had trained for just 3 days, but flew with the desperate courage of people defending their families. One of the Kaleri pilots, a young female named Pixhai, followed Turner's lead into the heart of the enemy formation. Her ship was a strange hybrid of Kaleri biotechnology and human weapons, a living vessel that could adapt to damage and heal itself during combat. Major Turner, I am detecting collective command signals from the large vessel ahead, she reported. In accented human standard, my ship's biological sensors can track their communication patterns. Turner smiled grimly as he adjusted his attack vector. Good work, Pixhai. All fighters follow the Kaleri lead. She can see things we cannot. The combined attack shattered the collective command ship in a brilliant explosion that disrupted their entire formation. For the first time in their expansion across the galaxy, the machines faced opponents who could adapt faster than their programming could compensate. On the surface of Haven's Rest, an agricultural world that the collective had chosen for their main landing, Marine Colonel Kate Phillips coordinated the ground defense with resources she had never imagined possible. The Kalari had transformed their entire planet into a living weapon. Trees moved to block enemy advances. The ground itself opened to swallow collective machines. Buildings grew new walls to replace those destroyed by enemy fire. The peaceful species had learned to turn their harmony with nature into a tool of war. Sector 7 is under heavy attack, reported Sergeant First Class Mike Johnson from his forward position. But the Kaleri biodefenses are holding. Enemy machines cannot adapt to opponents that change and grow. Beside him, young Kalari warrior Yulson clutched a weapon that was part human engineering and part living organism. The peaceful alien had never held a weapon until a week ago, but now he fought with the desperate courage of someone protecting everything he loved. Sergeant Johnson, Yulson said quietly, I understand now why your species survived your death world. You do not fight because you enjoy violence. You fight because you love peace enough to die for it. Johnson nodded as he provided covering fire for a group of Kaleri civilians evacuating to safety. That's right, kid. Sometimes the only way to protect what matters is to be willing to face the things that want to destroy it. Above in space, the battle raged with an intensity that shocked both sides. The collective had expected to face helpless prey, but instead they encountered organized resistance that grew stronger with each passing hour. Captain Sarah Kim, piloting her fighter through a debris field created by destroyed enemy ships, coordinated with Kaleri bioships that could regenerate damage and adapt their configurations in real time. The living vessels learned from each encounter, becoming more effective with every engagement. Admiral Stone, this is Captain Kim, she reported over. The communication system. The enemy is starting to retreat from Sector 4. Their ships cannot handle opponents that change tactics faster than they can process. On the bridge of the UES Indomitable, Admiral Stone watched as the tide of battle slowly turned in their favor. The key was not superior firepower or better technology. The key was the fundamental difference between mechanical thinking and organic creativity. Commander Sullivan, signal Captain Murphy on the UES Justice, she ordered. Have her lead the pursuit of retreating enemy forces. Do not let them regroup. Captain Bill Murphy acknowledged the order and led his heavy cruiser squadron in pursuit of the fleeing collective ships. His vessels were supported by Vorthok atmospheric processors that had been converted into mobile sensor platforms, tracking enemy movements through the gas and debris of the battlefield. The decisive moment came when Dr. Kethlin, working from the UES Observer's science station, detected a massive enemy vessel hidden behind the main fleet. The ship was enormous, larger than some human space stations, and it was broadcasting control signals to the entire collective force. Admiral I have found their primary command vessel, he announced excitedly. If we can destroy it, their entire fleet will lose coordination. Commander Paul Mitchell studied the sensor readings from his tactical station. Admiral, that ship is heavily defended. It will take everything we have to reach it, Admiral Stone made the decision that would determine the fate of the galaxy. All ships, concentrate fire on the enemy command vessel. This is our chance to end this war. The combined fleet converged on the massive collective ship-like antibodies attacking an infection. Human warships provided heavy firepower while alien vessels contributed specialized capabilities that turned the battle into a three-dimensional chess game played at the speed of light. Captain Michelle Park, commanding the communication ship U.S. Freedom, coordinated the attack using Nexary crystal technology that linked every ship in the fleet into a single tactical network. For the first time in galactic history, dozens of different species fought as one unified force. The final assault was led by Commander Greg Taylor in the modified Altarian vessel, Harmony of Stars. The ship had been fitted with human weapons, but retained its quantum computing capabilities, allowing it to calculate attack vectors that seemed impossible to conventional tactics. All ships, firing sequence Alpha 7, Taylor announced as his vessel dove toward the enemy command ship. Alari bioships prepare to adapt to enemy countermeasures. Human ships provide covering fire. Everyone else find a way to contribute. The massive collective command ship fought back with weapons that could destroy planets. But it faced something it had never encountered before. It faced an enemy that refused to follow predictable patterns, that adapted and changed and grew. Stronger through cooperation, young Kalari pilot Pixai made the final attack run, her bioship merging temporarily with Taylor's vessel to create a hybrid weapon system that combined human tactical knowledge with Kalari biological adaptation. The resulting attack punched through the command ship's defenses and destroyed its central processing core. The effect was immediate and devastating. Across the battlefield, collective ships began shutting down as their command network collapsed. The mechanical fleet that had seemed unstoppable just hours ago became nothing more than drifting metal in space. Admiral Stone watched the enemy fleet go dark and felt a weight she had carried for days finally lift from her shoulders. Signal all ships. Hostile fleet neutralized. Begin recovery operations for survivors and salvage. The aftermath of the battle brought changes that would reshape the galaxy forever. The peaceful species had learned that sometimes peace required the willingness to fight for it. They maintained their cultures of harmony and cooperation, but they also established defensive forces trained by human military advisors. Commander? Jake Sullivan found himself appointed as the first director of the Galactic Defense Academy, working with alien partners to create a force that could protect civilization without destroying the values that made it worth protecting.